Hi, my name is Bob Sjogren, and I'm with a ministry called Unveiling Glory. And I want to bring you a message that I call the top 5 life lessons most homeschool families miss. Now, why am I doing this? Well, we've got 4 children. You'll meet them in just a second, but all 4 of our children were homeschooled. And we realize that if our students know the 3 R's, if they know reading, writing, arithmetic, all the English and subjects they're supposed to know, but they don't know these life lessons, my wife and I would have failed at homeschooling our kids. If they miss these 5 life lessons, they've missed everything, and we would have done a great injustice to them. And as homeschooling parents, and now in creating homeschooling material, we see a lot of people who have missed the big picture of what life is all about, these life lessons. So as a result, we've put this together. Let me introduce you to my wife. Her name is Debbie. That's our picture right there. We've got 4 wonderful children. Here's our last family vacation. I'm there on the far right. There's my wife. Our youngest child, Hunter, is in the white. He's there. Next is his brother, Luke. He is the oldest. We've got 2 bookend boys, the oldest and the youngest. He's married to beautiful Hannah there with their lovely child, Layla, our granddaughter. And then our 2 daughters are over there on the end. Luke and his wife are heading into a full-time mobilizing ministry to basically be working with Muslims somewhere in the world. Elise, on the very far left in the blue, is already working among Muslims in Palestine. Abigail is a head bartender at a bar in the Phoenix, Arizona area. And Hunter is seeking to be a pastor at some point in his career with various other things. So that's kind of an overall view. We homeschooled all 4 of them. Excuse me, my wife homeschooled all 4 of them. I coached the basketball team. But she homeschooled all 4 of them for about 20 years. So we've got some experience, and we've seen these top 5 lessons and why they need to be lived out. So what are the top 5 life lessons that we need to understand? Well, the first one, and we'll go over a list and then go in each detail. The first one is that idolatry still exists among homeschoolers. Idolatry still exists among homeschoolers. Number 2, heaven is cool. Heaven is a cool place to go to. Number 3, you don't earn your salvation, but you earn your rewards. You don't earn your salvation, but you earn your rewards. Number 4, there's a story in the Bible. The story of the Bible from Genesis to Revelation. And number 5, life is not about us. These are all in descending order of importance. So in other words, the least important is going to be first, idolatry. The most important will be last. Life is not about us. Let's start at the very beginning. Idolatry still exists among homeschoolers. Now, in the book of Leviticus chapter 26, verse 1, we read these words. Do not make idols or set up an image or a sacred stone for yourselves, and do not place a carved stone in your land to bow down before it. I am the Lord, your God. Now, when we think about this Leviticus, we think of pieces of wood that are plated with gold, and so we think, we don't have anything like that today, especially among homeschoolers. Well, let me tell you some of the idols that I've seen in my own life and I've seen in other people's lives. The first idol is what I would call the perfect child. When Debbie and I were homeschooling our kids, we set up a lot of different things that tried to present our children as the perfect child. The perfect child in our family, the perfect child in our church, the perfect child in the activities that they did in athletics, all of these various things. And as a result of that, we had no idea that we were putting expectations on our children that they could not live up to. They had to do everything correctly. They had to put their hand on our arms before they could talk to us if we were talking to another adult. They had to speak in a certain tone inside the house versus outside the house. They had to act in certain ways. Little did we know that we were setting up for them an idol of the perfect child, and we weren't really focusing on Jesus and His grace and His forgiveness. Oh, sure, they knew about it, but that was secondary. The primary was that they had to be the perfect child and be absolutely obedient to everything we wanted. Another idol we set up for them was the perfect outward form. They had to dress a certain way. They had to look a certain way. They couldn't wear certain things. They had to wear other things. And they had to look exactly the way we wanted them to look. And we found this to be okay for our first two, but our third child, the bartender, who still loves God in her own way, the third one rebelled. Why? Because we had pushed the perfect vision, the perfect image of the perfect child, the perfect outward form. And she just says, I can't live up to my perfect brother and sister. And so she went her own way and rebelled. She wasn't going to follow the perfect outward forms because in a lot of ways we'd set it up as an idol for our children without even realizing it. We also had another idol. It was called the perfect relationship. In other words, the perfect dating relationship. It was the whole idea of kissing, dating, goodbye. Even though it's a great book, we've read it, we've trained our kids in it. It was the idea that your first kiss is going to be on your marriage day, or at least the day before your wedding day. And so this is what a perfect relationship would look like. We brought their friends in. We held a mini seminar for their kids to watch and to go through and to experience. And so we did all of these things trying to train our kids in the perfect relationship. And when it didn't happen, our oldest did have the perfect relationship. He's the only one married. But the other two didn't have it. And when they fell, when they gave away their first kiss, when other things happened, they were crushed. Why? They had an idol in their life. We had given them an idol that they weren't even aware of, that we weren't even aware of, and we weren't focusing on grace and mercy from Jesus. We're far more worried about the perfect child, the perfect relationship, the perfect outward form, than we were about them experiencing His grace and His love. There was another idol we had set up, and that was the perfect future. The perfect future. Here's what we want. I've seen a lot of parents, we want you to grow up, kids. We want you to get a good education. And when you get a good education, we want you to go to a good college. When you go to a good college, we want you to get a good job. When you get that good job, we want you to move back to where we are. We want you to live close by so we can get married, have children, so our grandchildren can be close to us. And as a result, we've pictured for them what we want for their future. We weren't letting them dream their own dreams. We don't let them envision what God may want them to do. We are subtly inserting into them a perfect future, the way we as parents envision it. Another idol that comes in is a perfect control. Now, I've seen this in a lot of parents, and that is a very high control over their children. Because they want everything perfect in their child's lives, they try to control all of the environment, all of the surrounding of their kids. They tell them what they can eat, what they can't eat in order to not gain weight. If they go to the youth group, they go with them to the youth group and sit in the back, and they see who they're talking to and who they're relating to, and then they talk about it when they go home. We've seen them when they've been to any kind of a class, when a kind of a homeschooling academy. They'll be talking with the teachers or the parents that are teaching. What did my child do? Well, did they do this? Did they do that? Or who are they talking to? Who do they have relationships? They're trying to control the child so much the child is being smothered. And in one family where we saw this happen, the child, once they turned 18, bolted out the door. They were the perfect child up until the time they turned 18. It was outward form, outward control. They were showing the outward manifestation of being the perfect child because that's what their parents wanted. Inwardly, they were rebelling. And when they hit 18, they were out the door. All of these things, the perfect child, the perfect outward form, the perfect relationship, the perfect future, having perfect control, are idols in our lives. And we're not aware of it. Men and women who are watching this, you don't want the perfect child. That's an idol. You want a godly child. A godly child who walks with God, who may fall again and again, but they get back up, they repent, they experience the grace of Jesus, they know the grace of Jesus, and they continue to walk with him in a way that's pleasing to the Father. Well, let me tell you another life lesson that we need to know. And that is that heaven is a cool place. Heaven is really a cool place. So why do we need to know that? Philippians chapter 1, verse 21, you're very familiar with, I'm sure. It says these words, "For to me, to live is Christ, and to die is gain." Now, I've had that verse memorized. I've had many people quote it. I've quoted it myself many times. But I've come to realize over years and years of experience and years of living life that most Christians don't believe that. Here's how most Christians really believe Philippians chapter 1, verse 21. "For me to live is Christ, to die is second best. But at least you're not going to hell. Look on the bright side of things." What have they done? They've made hell down here, earth up here, and heaven right here. Hell, earth, and heaven. Heaven is a step down from our experience here on this earth. How do we know that? Go to any adult Sunday school class and listen to the prayer requests. What are they? You'll find out that 90 to 95% of most of the prayer requests are health related. Pray for so-and-so, they got cancer. Pray for so-and-so, they fell down and broke their hip. Pray for so-and-so who's got leukemia. Pray for and it's a medical report. What are they non-verbally communicating? They're non-verbally communicating, "I don't want to die." Why don't they want to die? Because if they die, they go to heaven, and heaven's kind of boring. I mean, come on. A 24-hour worship service, we're floating on a cloud playing a harp. You know, gag me with the spoon. There's no way I want that. And as a result, they cling to these 80 years or so, 80, 90 years, however many years they have. They cling to the years here on this earth. Because they've got a misunderstanding of what heaven is all about. You say, well, of course there's a misunderstanding because no one really knows it. And we look at 1 Corinthians chapter 2, verse 9. It says, "However, as it is written, no eye has seen, no ear has heard, and no human mind has conceived the things God has prepared for those who love him." Now, that is true that we cannot see it, we cannot understand it, but we've got to realize two things. Number one, Revelation chapter 13:6 says this, "It," meaning the beast, "opened its mouth to blaspheme God and to slander his name," now catch these next words, "and his dwelling place, and those who live in heaven." Did you know that Satan not only blasphemes God, but he tries to get you to misunderstanding what heaven is? He tries to slander heaven. Why? Well, if he can slander heaven, if heaven is seen as boring, unimaginable, kind of an unearthly existence, we're floating around like spirits on clouds, we can't even really imagine it, well, why should we share the good news that people can spend an eternity in a boring, ghostly place that even we're not looking forward to? That's not good news. And if I don't have good news, I'm not going to tell anybody else good news. So I'm not going to really tell people, encourage them to get to heaven. Let's go back to 1 Corinthians chapter 2, verse 9. "No eye has seen, no ear has heard, and no human mind has conceived the things God has prepared for those who love him." Look at the very next verse, verse 10. "These are the things God has revealed to us by his Spirit." God has revealed to us by his Spirit. It's not that we don't know enough about heaven. That's not the problem. It's about the fact that we haven't studied what we do have, what the Spirit has revealed to us. Men and women, we need to study about heaven. Colossians chapter 3, verse 1 says this, "Since then you have been raised with Christ. Set your hearts on the things above, where Christ is seated at the right hand of God." Set your hearts on things above. The original Greek set your hearts on the things above, means a diligent, active, single-minded investigation. In other words, God's Word is telling us we need to make a diligent, focused, single-minded investigation into what heaven is all about. So, if we get excited about it, we're going to want to tell more people about it. So what has God's Spirit revealed to us? A couple of things in the Bible. We're just going to go over them very quickly. Number one, the present heaven is not the permanent heaven. My mom died just actually a few days ago, last week. My mom is in heaven. She's got a new body, new whole life, seeing her parents, her husband, and all of her relatives. But the heaven she's in is very temporary. Why? Because in Revelation 21:1 we see these words. Then I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and the first earth had passed away. The heaven that my mom is in right now, that my dad is in right now, temporary. It's wonderful, it's beautiful, it's gorgeous, amazing, but it's temporary. Something better is going to be created when the new heavens and the new earth come together. In Luke chapter 16, verses 19 to 31, the story of Lazarus and the rich man, we learn a couple of more things about heaven. I'm not going to read the passage, it's too long, but here are a couple of things that we learn from this passage. Number one, there is a fixed chasm between heaven and hell. Fixed chasm. You end up in hell, there's no way you're going to get to heaven. You can't go back and forth. There's a fixed chasm separated. In both heaven and hell, we seem to be able to reason and communicate. Thirdly, we maintain distinct identities. My mom is right now known as Donna Ruth Stroll Sjogren Petty. Donna Ruth Stroll, her maiden name, Sjogren, when she married my dad, and then Petty, she married her high school sweetheart after 63 years, after both their spouses died. She's got many names. She'll be known by that. She'll have a distinct identity. So will you, so will I. Number four, there was continuity with their earthly lives. There's continuity with our earthly lives. We'll know things that happened here on earth. We'll carry that into heaven. We'll have memory of it. There'll be continuity in our earthly lives. We'll be physical beings. We'll have a body. We'll have skin. We'll have a face. We'll be recognized. And lastly, we'll have a clear memory of the things on the earth. A clear memory of things. We'll remember things that happened on the earth. We'll carry that into heaven. God will allow us to have that. Many things that we can learn from that one passage. In Revelation 6, 9 through 11, we learn something else. Number one, people will be remembered for their lives on the earth. You and I will be remembered. My mom is being remembered. My dad is being remembered for the lives that they lived on the earth. Number two, people are emotional and can raise their voices. It's not just one monotone. We can raise our voices. We'll be showing and expressing emotion. People are aware of each other and the situation on earth. Another thing we learned, people can ask God questions. Did you know that? You can ask God a question in heaven. People will have a concern for justice. There is also time in heaven. It's not one static state. There will be time that goes on. People still have a strong connection with those on the earth. When I get to heaven, I can't wait to see my mom and my dad and to ask a ton of questions about our lives that I didn't know, being the youngest of 4 children. And finally, God knows to the last detail what is still happening on earth. What other passages tell us more about heaven? In Hebrews chapter 11, verse 10, we read these words, "For he was looking forward to the city with foundations, whose architect and builder is God." Looking forward to the city with foundations, that must be talking about heaven. He made an analogy that heaven is like a city. Heaven's like a city? If it's like a city, then it has buildings, roads, culture, art, music, theaters, athletics, goods, services. All of those are going to be in heaven. Now, either it's a very poor analogy, or if it's a good analogy, we too, the heaven that we go to, it's going to have cities, buildings, roads, buildings, arts, music, theaters, all of those things in the new heaven. We're not going to be in some 24-hour worship service. We're going to be living life like it's like here in a city with only good things happening. Another passage, Revelation 22:3. No longer will there be any curse. The throne of God and the Lamb will be in the city, and his servants will serve him. Serve him. We're going to have jobs up in heaven in those cities, serving God. Revelation 5:10. You've made them be a kingdom and priests to serve our God, and they shall reign on the earth. Oh my gosh. We'll be in cities, we'll have jobs, and part of it will be reigning on the earth. Revelation 3:21. We're going to sit with Christ on his throne. And Revelation 2:26, we'll have authority over nations. Whoa! This blew me away. This blew me away when I saw what God had in store for us with regards to heaven. It is not going to be some 24-hour worship service. We'll be with Christ. Oh, men and women. Heaven is so totally cool. But if we don't know it, if we think it's some boring 24-hour worship service gagging with a spoon, I don't want to get people to go there. But if we're ruling and reigning over universes, we have jobs, there's cities, I want to be there, and I want to get others to come with me. So, what's the third life lesson? Here's the third life lesson. You don't earn your salvation. You earn rewards in heaven. Listen, when I was growing up as a child, I had my Catholic friends and I had my Protestant friends. And my Catholic friends told me, you know, Bob, in order to get to heaven, you've got to be a good person. And my Protestant friends said, no, that's not it at all. You've got to have faith in Jesus. And the Catholic friends, well, yeah, you got to have faith in Jesus, but it's based on works. And no, it's not no works. And you know, I had a problem. The problem was they both had scriptures to back it up. My Catholic friends would take me to Matthew 25, verses 34 and 35. Speaking about the judgment day, the king will say to those on his right, come, you who are blessed by my Father, take your inheritance, the kingdom prepared for you since the creation of the world. For, why did they get their inheritance? For I was hungry and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger and you invited me in. I needed clothes and you clothed me. I was sick and you looked after me. I was in prison and you came to visit me. But my Protestant friends said, no, Ephesians 2:8 and 9. For it is by grace you have been saved through faith. And this is not of yourselves. It is a gift of God. Not by works. So that no one could boast. So I had scripture that said both. It's not by works. It's by faith. No, it's based on the works that you did. This totally boggled my mind until I finally discovered something. That there was a difference, a huge difference between our names being recorded in heaven and us being rewarded in heaven. There's a difference between our names being recorded in heaven and us being rewarded in heaven. The Bible is very clear that there are rewards for us in heaven. Colossians 3, verses 23 and 24. Whatever you do, work at it with all your heart, as working for the Lord, not for human masters, since you know that you will receive an inheritance from the Lord as a reward. Oh, okay. I'll receive an inheritance from God as a reward for the works, for the things that I have done. Matthew 6, he commands us to store up those rewards. Matthew 6:20. But store up for yourselves treasures in heaven where moths and vermin do not destroy, where thieves do not break in and steal. Matthew 5:11 and 12. Speaking about being persecuted. Blessed are you when people insult you, persecute you, and falsely say all kinds of evil against you because of me. Rejoice and be glad, because great is your reward in heaven. Wait a second. This is saying if I'm beaten, if I'm on the mission field and people are beating me, kicking me, I'm supposed to rejoice? No way. I'm supposed to run away and get as far away as I can. Jesus says, no, rejoice. Why? Because great is your reward in heaven. The word reward there is the Greek word misthos. The Greek word misthos means wages. It's the wages a person earns. It's the same Greek word used in 1 Timothy 5:18 that says these words. Do not muzzle an ox while it is treading out the grain, and the worker deserves his wages, his misthos. Catch what Jesus is doing. He's saying you earn rewards just like you earn wages here on this earth. As a result, you earn wages, you earn rewards. I didn't know this until I realized there were 2 judgment seats in heaven. Maybe you know this, maybe you don't. Revelation 20:11, there's a great white throne. That's where all non-Christians go, and he says, I don't know you. But 2 Corinthians 5:10 speaks about a judgment seat of Christ. That's a different judgment seat. That's a different throne. The great white throne for non-Christians, the judgment seat for all Christians. Listen to what it says, 2 Corinthians 5:10. For we must all appear before the judgment seat of Christ, so that each of us may receive what is due us for the things done in the body, whether good or bad. What is due us? In other words, we earned this. We earned it. 1 Corinthians 15:41 and 42 says, when we get to heaven, some of us are going to shine like the sun. Some of us will shine like the moon. Some of us will shine like stars. We're not all going to be the same. Luke 19, some of us will rule over 10 cities. Some of us will rule over 5 cities. Some of us will be there, but we won't rule over any cities. Why are there differences? Based on how we live our lives here on this earth. Bruce Wilkinson penned these words that changed me forever. What we believe determines where we spend eternity. What we do determines how we spend eternity. What we believe determines where we spend eternity. What we do determines how we spend eternity. We're not all going to be the same. How we live our lives on this earth determines how we'll exist forever. The sad news is some of us will get to heaven. We'll stand before the judgment seat of Christ, and our works will be burned up like wood, hay, and straw, and we'll have nothing. We'll make it there. We'll be before the judgment seat of Christ, but we won't have any rewards. That's what 1 Corinthians chapter 3, 12 through 15 is talking about. Oh, men and women, if we understand that we need to live with an eternal perspective, that there are rewards, that'll keep us from growing up and saying, oh yeah, I prayed the prayer, I'm a believer. Yeah, I know Jesus. And living a terrible life Monday through Saturday. This gives us motivation to live a godly life all the way through. You don't earn your salvation. Getting to heaven is by faith alone, solely in Jesus. But you do earn rewards. That's the third life lesson we need to teach our kids that's being overlooked and missed by most homeschooling families. Number 4 is the fact that there is a story in the Bible. Not Bible stories. We all know Bible stories. David and Goliath, Daniel and the lions, then the 10 plagues. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about one overall arching story that starts in Genesis, runs all the way through to Revelation, and allows us to read our Bible as one book, with one story, one theme, one heart of God. I never knew this. As I was growing up as a child, I was clueless to what it was. But let me show you about it. In Genesis chapter 12, God makes a promise to a man named Abram. And he says in this promise to Abram, Abram, I'm going to do 2 things. Number 1, I want to bless you. And number 2, I want you to turn around and be a blessing to all the nations on the face of the earth. I want to bless you so you can be a blessing to all the nations. I call that the top line of the covenant and the bottom line of the covenant. I got that from my mentor, Don Richardson. Top line blessings, bottom line responsibilities. This top line, bottom line runs all the way through the text. In fact, anything that's here in my Bible that's highlighted is bottom line. And look how much of the Old Testament is highlighted. So much is highlighted because so much is bottom line. God has had a desire to redeem people from every tongue, every tribe, and every nation since he made this promise to Abraham. And then we find something very interesting. In Revelation chapter 5, verse 9, there are people from every tongue, every tribe, and every nation worshiping the Lord. People from every tongue, every tribe, and every nation worshiping the Lord. So in other words, what God set out to do in Genesis chapter 12 in a promise to Abraham, he pulls off in Revelation chapter 5 when all nations are reached. Here's a promise. Here's the fulfillment. Promise, fulfillment, promise, fulfillment. Everything in between is one story. The story that is so powerful that Jesus himself said in Matthew 24, verse 14, and this gospel of the kingdom will be preached in the whole world as a testimony to all nations, or every ethnic group, every tongue, every tribe, every nation. This gospel will be preached to all nations, and then the end will come. And then the end will come. Men and women, I used to think that basically we're just to be here on this earth doing some good deeds, and we're basically twiddling our thumbs waiting for Jesus to come back. That's not it at all. We, the church, have a job to do. We've got to reach the nations before Jesus comes back. It started in a promise, it ends in fulfillment, and everything is between is one story. And if you were to take this story out of the Bible, you'd have very little left to study. Why? Because everything else is the story. God's heart to redeem people from every tongue, every tribe, and every nation. You can't take this story out of the Bible. It's one book. But most Christians, unfortunately, only study half of their Bibles. They study the top line only, and because they study the top line only, they're missing half of their Bibles. Men and women, if we miss this half, and we teach our kids the 3 R's without teaching them this bottom half, we've done a great injustice to them. They need to know the entire story of the Bible. Well, there's a fifth life lesson that they need to know, and this is the most important one. And that is the fact that life is not about us. Life is not about us. I teach something called cat and dog theology. Cat and dog theology is a very simple theology that helps us ask a very simple question. And that is this: who is the main character of the Bible? Who is the main character of the Bible? Who is the protagonist? Who is the Bible all about? On the one hand, we can say the Bible is all about God. And if the Bible is all about God, we open up the pages to our Bible, we ask one simple question. What does God get? What does God get out of me being saved? What does God get when I go to heaven? What does God get? But there's another second possible main character, and that is this book is all about us, people, humanity. And if we read the Bible with that kind of perspective, we ask a very different question. What do I get out of this? What do I get when I'm saved? What do I get when I go to heaven? What's in this for me? I want to make 2 very bold statements to you. Statement number 1 is this: God is the main character of the Bible, and He lives to radiate His glory. Second statement I want to make is this: though the average Christian would say that God is the main character, we live and act as if humanity is the main character, and humanity often replaces God on the throne. These 2 different main characters results in 2 different types of Christianities. I call them cat and dog theology. It's based on a very simple joke about the differences between a cat and a dog. You see, a dog says, you pet me, you feed me, you shelter me, you love me. Oh, you must be God. Cat says the exact same thing. You pet me, you feed me, you shelter me, you love me. Oh, I must be God. We would never say it, but basically many Christians think that God lives for them. This joke characterizes much of Christian theology today. Dogs say, you must be God. Cats say, I must be God. Now, we'd never really say, I must be God. They know theologically we get kicked out of the church. But here's what a cat thinks. Cat thinks this: Jesus left the Father's glory for me. He suffered for me. He died for me. He's gone back to heaven to build a mansion for me. And He's up there interceding for me. Gee, I wonder who He lives for. He must live for me. And if God lives for me, I want to be like God. I'm going to live for me too. I'll just do it in a Christian context. I'll go to church every Sunday. I'll go to youth group. I'll go to Sunday school. I'll do all the right things. But deep down inside, I'm living for me. I'm living for myself in a Christian context. God must live for me. Dogs say, no, no, no. Jesus did everything to glorify his Father. Therefore, everything is about the glory of God. Now, in every person, you're going to find some cat attitudes and some dog attitudes. Okay? They're always there because we have an old nature and a new nature. They're both inside of us wrestling to get out. I want to go over some very basic differences, some practical differences between these two mindsets. I'm going to show the extremes. Most of us fall somewhere in the middle. But this is the root problem for much of what are the idols or the wrong life lessons that we've never taught our kids. It's based on this catitude, the cat attitude that we have. Let's look at the first one. Two different main characters results in two motivations for getting to heaven. Cats, you see, walk away from hell. If hell is over there and heaven is over there, here's how a cat gets to heaven. I don't want to go to hell. I don't want to go to hell. I don't want to go to hell. They're going toward heaven backwards, but they're focused on themselves the entire time. They haven't seen the beauty of God. See, a dog goes to heaven quite differently. Dogs walk toward heaven. They found someone who's so beautiful, who's so glorious, who's so awesome. They've fallen in love with this God, and they say, I love this God. I worship this God. Two different ways of getting to heaven. How about another difference? Obedience. Both cats and dogs want obedience. They both go to obedience school, but the obedience school they go to is very, very different. There's cat obedience school and dog obedience school. Dogs want to obey the master, whereas cats want the master to obey them. Dear Lord, I want this, this, this. In the name of Jesus, I claim it. Amen. How about quiet times? Both cats and dogs have quiet times. Both cats and dogs seek after God, but they do it quite differently. When a dog has a quiet time, he's focused on the glory of God. How is the glory of God shining in my parenting? How's the glory of God shining in the way we keep our house, in our neighborhood? How's the glory of God doing in my work? How's the glory of God doing in raising my kids? How is God being glorified in my grandparenting or my parenting? Cats are very different. When they go to meet with God, they ask one question. God, what can you do for me? God, I've got these owies. I've got these hurts. I've got these problems. I grew up in a dysfunctional family. Oh, God, heal my dysfunctionality. And so we talk to God about all the things that are wrong in our lives. And the focus, without realizing it, is on ourselves. We meet with God so that He can heal us. Very, very different quiet times. How about another difference? America and God. Both cats and dogs have a different view on which has a higher priority. If you see a cat driving down the road, their bumper sticker says, God bless America. If you see a dog driving down the road, you see a bumper sticker that says, America bless God. It's not about America. It's about God. Very big difference between cats and dogs. This cat and dog theology becomes the foundation for so much that is wrong, for the life lessons we've missed in our Christianity. We did a cartoon book on 101 differences between cats and dogs. Here's our first cartoon. How cats and dogs view God. The dog says, ah, my master. The cat says, ah, my staff. Cats use God for their purposes. Whereas dogs study theology, cats study meology. It's about me in the Bible. Hopefully you've noticed the theme. Cats are basically living for themselves in a Christian context. They go to church, they do all the right things, but deep down inside, it's all about them. And they've missed the very goal of what's happening. As a result, a cat's goal is to get from birth to death in the safest, easiest, most comfortable fashion possible. That's their goal in life. They're not going to sacrifice. They're not going to suffer for God. Here's the worst thing about cats. You see, cats want God's blessings more than they want God. It's not God they hunger for. It's His blessings. And they've missed so much. Well, let's quickly review. 5 life lessons that most homeschool families miss. Number 1, idolatry still exists. We set up idols without even realizing it. Much of those idols are in ourselves because we're living like cats. Everything is about us. Number 2, heaven is cool. Most people don't think heaven is cool, and so they're still living for themselves. Therefore, I'm not really going to live for heaven. I'm not going to get others to go to heaven because it's all about me. I'm living like a cat in a Christian context. But we need a whole new study on heaven. Number 3, you don't earn your salvation, you earn rewards. Huge difference. Number 4, there's a story in the Bible from Genesis to Revelation. We're to be involved in taking God's glory to every tongue, every tribe, and every nation. Number 5, life is not about us. It is about what God is doing, bringing his glory to all nations. Men and women, my wife and I homeschooled for 20 years. My wife homeschooled for 20 years. You get the idea. We had our kids for 20 years. We've seen the power that not teaching this can have on your kids. We've seen it with many homeschool families as well. I encourage you, I beg you, teach these lessons. This does happen to be the core of the curriculum that we have with Unveiling Glory. In Unveiling Glory, we have 4 years of homeschool curriculum. Year number 1 is cat and dog theology, helping your students to see life is not about them. Year 2, called RG3, Revealing God's Greatest Glory, talks about taking his glory to the nations, and it unveils the story of the Bible. Year 3, E267, Ephesians 2, 6, and 7, talks about not earning your salvation, but earning your rewards. We give your students a whole year on discerning that. And year number 4 is based on heaven. Get them excited about heaven, that they would be excited about going to spend eternity with God. I hope you, as you homeschool your kids, give them a balanced view. Because if they know the 3 R's, but they've missed this, they've missed everything.